Hi, and welcome back to English Lessons with Stephanie. This is Writing and Vocabulary Lesson 12. In this lesson, we'll talk about the vocabulary from this class's reading and listening passage about books and movies. Our first word is fiction. Fiction is most commonly used as a non-count noun that means a story that didn't happen. It's made up or invented, so it's not true. The opposite of fiction is nonfiction, which means something did happen. It's a true story. The verb form is fictionalized, that means to make something untrue, and the adjective is fictional. The example from the reading said, "My real pleasure is reading novels." Nonfiction can be just as rewarding. Sometimes we can say, is this truth or fiction? This question shows that truth is the opposite of fiction. The third example shows the adjective use. This movie is set in a fictional city called Smithsville. This means that Smithsville is not a real city. It doesn't exist in real life. Our next word is novel. Novel is a countable noun that means a book of fiction. So in the reading, when I said, I love reading novels, that just means I love reading fiction books. Novel can also be used as an adjective to mean new or creative. In this lesson, we'll use the word novel to mean a book. Our next word is lend. Lend is a transitive verb that means to give someone something for a short amount of time and expect it to be returned. So in the reading, I said I like to buy used books that I can then lend to friends. That means I'm giving the book to a friend and later they will give it back to me. In the next example, she forgot her wallet at home, so I lent her $20. And here we see the past tense of lend because lend is an irregular verb. It's conjugated like send. So the past tense of send is sent and the past tense of lend is lent. And in the last example, we see how we could use this in a question. Excuse me, could you lend me a pen? That means you're asking someone if you can use their pen for a short amount of time, and then you'll give it back to them. Here in the other column, we see that the word loan has a similar meaning. Loan is sometimes used as a verb, but it's also a noun. And loan is often used when talking about money. You take out a loan, that means you're borrowing money from the bank. So the opposite of lend is borrow. Borrow is also a transitive verb, and it means to take something to use for a short amount of time, expecting to return it. So lending is giving someone something and borrowing is taking something. So I borrow books from the library. Or in our second example, he was cold, so he borrowed my jacket. And in the third example, excuse me, could I borrow a pen? So the previous example said, could you lend me a pen? And this says, could I borrow a pen? They both have the same effect in that you're taking a pen from someone else. Next, we have the adjective convenient. Convenient is a very common adjective that's used to describe something that is easy to use and requires little time or effort. So many things today are about making our lives more convenient, making our lives easier, and making jobs faster to do. In the reading, I said it's still possible to borrow books, but it's not very convenient. I said this because you can borrow books from the library, but it's no longer very simple. You don't just go to the library and take something out. Now you have to choose something online, you have to order it, you have to make an appointment, and you have to go pick it up at a special time. So it's definitely not as easy or convenient as before. It takes more time and it takes more effort. In the second example, technology makes many things more convenient. And the third example shows the opposite. That hotel is in a very inconvenient location. It's very far from the airport. In the other column, I wrote two common uses of convenient. The first is a noun, convenience store. These are small stores that are located everywhere that sell drinks or cigarettes or magazines, milk, and oftentimes gas stations have convenience stores. And oftentimes these stores are open all night long, 24 hours a day. The second example is convenient time and convenient place. So when we're talking with friends or maybe with co-workers, we often ask, what is a convenient time to meet? Or what is a convenient place to meet? Because we want to make things easy for other people. Next, we have the word challenge. A challenge is a difficult task. It's used as a noun in this first example. Reading stories about people's lives, their challenges, and their triumphs is very satisfying. Our next example shows challenging as an adjective. This is used to describe something difficult. My Russian history class is very challenging. I'm afraid I won't pass the next test. The third example shows challenge used as a verb. And when we use challenge as a verb, it means we are saying that someone or something is wrong. So I challenged his idea that the world is flat. That means he believes the world is flat, and I am disagreeing with him. Next, we have the noun triumph, a big success. And in this example, it's kind of used as an opposite to challenge. Reading stories about people's lives, their challenges, and their triumphs is very satisfying. So these are kind of two opposite examples, something difficult and something very joyful and successful. Our second example shows triumph used as a verb, an intransitive verb. She triumphed in the last election. That means she had a big success. She won. Our last example shows the adjective form triumphant. They had a hard match, but in the end, they were triumphant. You can see in the other column that when we want to use triumph as a verb with an indirect object, we use it with the preposition over. So I could say she triumphed over him. That means she defeated him. Next, we have the non-count noun poetry. Poetry, as we talked about in the reading, is difficult to define, but it's artistic writing or speaking that isn't fiction, it isn't nonfiction. Sometimes it tells a story, but oftentimes it tells just about a feeling, or it's a very beautiful description of something. In the reading, I said reading poetry is different from reading fiction or nonfiction. So poetry is a non-count noun, but you can see here we have also a countable form, poem. So poem is one piece of poetry. Poetry just means all poems, many poems, all the poems, and a poet is a person who writes poetry. So the second example shows poem, the countable noun. She gave me a book of poems about nature. And the third example shows the adjective form poetic. His writing is very poetic. It means his writing is very beautiful. It sounds like poetry. Next, we have the verb appreciate. Appreciate means to be grateful for or to be pleased about something. In the reading, I said, I don't know much about poetry, but I'm starting to appreciate it more. We often use this word appreciate when we're talking about something that we like, that means something to us. Maybe we don't love it, and it's not our favorite thing, but we can enjoy it. That means we can appreciate it. We can also use the verb appreciate when someone does something nice for us, and we are very happy about it. We appreciate something. In the third example, we have an adjective form. He was appreciative of my help. That means he was grateful and glad that I helped him. The second example shows appreciation as a non-count noun. It's non-count because it's a feeling. The director gave her employees gifts to show her appreciation for all their hard work. Notice that the pronunciation of the C in appreciate makes the sh sound. So not appreciate, but appreciate, just like the CI in special. Next, we have the noun taste. And taste is used to describe a person's preferences, what they like, what they don't like. And it's usually used with a possessive pronoun, like my taste or her taste and his taste. In the reading, I was talking about myself and my husband, and I said we have very different tastes, but manage to find things we both enjoy. The second example, this book isn't really my taste. I don't enjoy romance novels. From this word family, you can see that taste is a verb also, but it means something different. It means to try a bit of something to eat or something to drink. Then the adjective form tasteful means that something is showing good taste, and the adverb form is related to that form. So in the last example, the room was tastefully decorated. That means the room was decorated in a way that shows good taste. Now, I know that taste is subjective. That means it's personal. There's no right or wrong taste. So the word tasteful is subjective. I mean, it depends on who's talking about it. That means that there's good taste or bad taste. Next, we have the noun history. History is the study of past events. You can see that history has two adjective forms, historic and historical. Historic usually means important in some kind of way, and historical means specifically related to the past. In the reading, I said in the past year, we watched historical dramas, comedies, action movies, and suspenseful dramas. So we say historical dramas because these are dramas that take place in the past. In the second example, today is a historic day. 100 years ago, women were given the right to vote. That means this is an important day. You could also say historical, meaning that it's related to history. but historic just means this is an important, very memorable occasion. The third example shows the noun form history. He has a history of many athletic triumphs. That means he personally in the past has had many athletic successes. And that's an example of history used as a countable noun. History is most often used as a non-count noun, like we should study history. That means history of the world, history of the country, whatever. Next, we have the phrase a hard time. A hard time means difficulty or trouble. In the reading, I said, I have a hard time watching violent or scary things, so I asked my friends for recommendations. That means it's hard for me, it's difficult for me to watch violence. The second example says, we had a hard time studying for the test. There were so many things we didn't understand. Or, the third example, the teacher gave the student a hard time for coming late to class. If you give someone else a hard time, that means you're making them feel bad about something they did or you're asking questions about it. You're not just letting it go. In the other column, you can see that we usually say have a hard time. That means it's just like saying I have difficulty, have a hard time. And then we have give someone else a hard time. That means you're making trouble over something. Notice that when you have a hard time, it's followed by a gerund verb. So I have a hard time watching. We had a hard time studying. However, when you give someone else a hard time, you use for plus a gerund verb after it. So the teacher gave the student a hard time for coming late to class. Next, we have two countable nouns, program and show. We didn't actually use the word program in the reading, but it's a synonym for show, so I wanted to put them both here because people say program and show a lot. These two words can mean many things. They can be used for live events like a musical show or a singing show, but in the reading, they just refer to TV productions. So I said, mostly we watch American and British shows, but we also watch some Spanish language shows. You could also use the word program. Next, we have the word series. And series is a countable noun that means a number of connected shows. And these shows would be called episodes. So the previous word show could mean one single show that just is unconnected to anything else. But when we have episodes, that means that there are many shows that are connected, usually with the same characters or the same writers, the same place. So if you have many shows, we call that a series. If it's a small series, we can call it a mini-series. And sometimes we have series that go on for many years, and then each of those years is called a season, which we'll talk about next. So series here is used as a countable noun. So the example I gave was, right now we're watching the second season of a series about a family involved in all sorts of crime. Or you could say, this show is a serial drama, if you want to use the adjective form. So here's the word season on its own slide. Production time of part of a series are usually a year. And season is a countable noun. And this is also the same word we use for the parts of time of a year. Winter, spring, summer, fall, or autumn. Those are the seasons of the year. The second example, the show Breaking Bad has 5 seasons. The first season has 7 episodes. Next, we have the words drama and comedy. A drama is a serious story, and a comedy is a funny story. So usually we talk about them as opposites. And the adjective forms would be dramatic and comedic. So notice there's a slight pronunciation difference between comedy and comedic. So when we discuss actors, we typically have dramatic actors and comedic actors, although of course we do have actors that play both dramatic and comedic parts. And in the second example, I wrote rom-com is short for romantic comedies. These are very common. And then sitcom is how we describe situation comedies. These are types of comedies. And sitcoms are usually television shows where you use the same actors and they have funny things happen to them each episode. Next, we have the adjective violent. Violent means physically hurtful or aggressive. In the reading, I said, I have a hard time watching violent or scary things. Violence is a non-countable noun. In the second example, it says, many parents are concerned that their children see too much violence in video games and online. And in our third example, we see violent describing a storm. The violent storm damaged homes across the city. That means the storm had a lot of force, a lot of power, and physically hurt the houses. Next, we have a noun, suspense. Suspense is a nervous feeling of waiting for something to happen. In the reading, we use suspenseful, the adjective. In the past year, we've watched historical dramas, comedies, action movies, and suspenseful dramas. So suspenseful dramas are movies where you are waiting, you feel nervous and a little scared because you want to know what's going to happen next. So these are movies where there's a lot of action or a little bit of mystery, a little bit of fear. In our second example, it says, "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me what happened." And then our third example shows another use of the adjective form. We waited for 20 suspenseful minutes for the doctor's news. Next, we have the verb recommend. Recommend is to suggest something or give an opinion on a choice. And in the reading, we use recommendation as a countable noun. When I said I asked my friends for recommendations about what to watch. The second example shows us recommend used as a verb. We recommend this hotel to all of our friends. So here we see recommend followed by a noun. We recommend this, we recommend something. And the third example shows the verb recommended followed by a sentence. The doctor recommended that I get more sleep. Next, we have the noun character. Character in the reading means a fictional person in a story. So when we read books or watch movies, they all have characters, good characters, bad characters, funny characters. I said I'm enjoying this show because of all the interesting characters. And we often talk about the main character. Like in this last example, the main character in this novel is a young police officer who lives in Oakland. That means the biggest character in the story, the most important one. In the other column, I wrote that we also use the word character as a non-count noun to describe personality, what type of person someone is. So you can say, she has good character. That means she's a good person. She doesn't lie. She doesn't cheat. Next, we have the noun crime. And crime means an action or actions that are against the law. Crime can be used as a countable noun, like he committed a crime, or it could be used as a non-count noun to talk about all crimes. Like in the example, I said we're watching a show about a family involved in all sorts of crime. That's a non-count noun. The second example shows us crime as a countable noun. Is it a crime to lie on your taxes? The third example shows the person form criminal. Criminal is a person who commits a crime. The police caught several criminals robbing a convenience store. Now, there's also a verb form, criminalize, that means to make something a crime. Criminal can also be used as an adjective and an adverb criminally. In the other column, I showed you the verb commit, because when we talk about crime, we don't say we do a crime, we say we commit a crime. And finally, we have the phrasal verb look up. Look up is a separable transitive verb that means to try to find specific information, usually online or in a book. So in the reading, I said, when we're using a Kindle, it's much easier to look up word definitions on an e-reader than with a paper book. The second example says, let's look up what time the museum opens. So that means you would probably look on the internet and see what time the museum opens. And then the last example shows us this phrasal verb separated. I didn't know who Amanda Gorman was, so I looked her up online. Okay, so that's the vocabulary for today. To really practice this vocabulary and get to know it, you should write a sentence using each new word. You can summarize the week's reading in 1 to 2 sentences. And then you can answer these 2 questions by writing longer paragraphs. Do you prefer reading books or watching movies, and why? And describe your taste in books and or movies. So great work today. Continue with speaking lesson 12 so you can have a chance to practice speaking with this new vocabulary and the new grammar from this week. And if you're enjoying these classes, please remember to like, comment, ask questions, and subscribe. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.